Growing up in the 1980s, I remember not even being able to imagine that we were going to hit the year 2000. It seemed totally unreal at the time. And yet, here we are in 2024. Where has the time gone? Well, if you are like so many people, you have been putting this idea of writing your book on your New Year's resolution list year after year after year, and somehow you aren't managing to make any progress at all. Well, the problem is not you. And today I want to talk about all the ways that you can think about the benefits and the process of writing your memoir so that you can actually dive in and grab this opportunity, not only to get your book out there, but to get so many other hidden benefits that happen within that process of getting your life story down on paper. You are not going to want to miss this one. Stay tuned. If you are ready to climb out of the Google rabbit hole and actually start making progress on your memoir project, then I have got a download for you. It's called the Memoir Method Checklist, and it's going to walk you through every single stage in the process from developing your memoir idea through writing, publishing, and promoting. And if you download it today, you're also going to get a free video bonus training that will walk you through all the steps you need to do to get a solid outline to get you started. Download it now. So here we are in New Year's resolution time, wondering how we are going to beat the odds and keep our resolution, all of our good intentions going, not only through the end of January and into February, which would put us ahead of most people in terms of their New Year's resolutions, but all the way through the completion of that book. And I want to break down the reasons that this can be so difficult before we get into this discussion of all the opportunities and benefits you are going to get this year when you actually follow through on this project. So first, let's talk about what is the problem here. And what it isn't is this idea that we're just procrastinators. I hear this all the time is people say like, I just can't make any progress, or I always get sidetracked, something comes up with my kids, or, I want to change jobs, or I'll just wait until, my kids are out of the house, or I'll just wait until, I'm through this big time in my life where I've got all this stuff going on. And while sometimes it's true that it's not the right time, I don't think that's usually the true reason that we get sidetracked, particularly when it comes to writing our books. What I have seen is that there are two major things that will derail you from following through on your New Year's resolution. The first is writing your life story is a big, big thing. And if you are a first-time author, you've never written a book before, it's so difficult to imagine how this huge nebulous story of your life is ever going to practically make its way onto the page. That is totally reasonable. It's totally normal to feel really kind of nervous and uncertain about how that's going to work. I mean, just think about all of the other big things you've done in your life. Lots of other people around you have done them too. So when you applied for your very first, big grown-up job, there were lots of people around you who had done that before. You had maybe even done it on a smaller scale, right? If you had applied for a part-time job, you kind of knew, okay, well, we get the application or fill it out online, we submit it, we wait for them to call, we follow up. We know how that works, so we can imagine it. The same is true if you planned a wedding, if you had a baby, you could look into all of the people around you and get support from people who were going through the same thing or had already gone through the same thing. And the same is true of so many of the big choices we make in our lives. When we plan a trip, we can talk to other people. When we get a new haircut, we can talk to other people. But who is there for us when we're getting ready to write our life story? Chances are you do not have hundreds of people around you who have been through the same thing. And that is what sends us on the Google rabbit hole. And the Google rabbit hole is the very fastest way to derail ourselves from our big book goals. In the end, that means that this big, huge, nebulous project just feels even bigger, even more nebulous, and even more difficult to accomplish. Now, it's normal to feel that way, but it is not true. Just like any of those other examples, planning a wedding, having a baby, going on a trip, there are tried and true steps that we can take to finish our memoir from start to publication. So keep that in mind. But the second cause is what I really want to drill down on today. And that cause is we think we want to write a book, but we have not yet articulated all of the reasons it's going to be beneficial to do so. Now, what that means is you are committing to hours and hours, literally months of your life working on this book without any real clear sense of why you're doing it. Now, maybe you've kind of volleyed around, oh, I want to help other people. I want to get my ideas out there. I want to record this for my kids or my grandkids. But really drilling down on some of the hidden benefits that are going to come as you work through this process can help to motivate you and keep you going way past February 1st and all the way through to completion. So I want to share some of the benefits that I have seen in my clients over the years so that you can keep this why in mind and really help use that to drive yourself forward even when the writing gets tough. So let's get down to our top 5 reasons it's time to start your memoir now, plus my one bonus reason that you should not start your memoir. All right, so number 1, and this one is so huge. When you write your memoir, you are going to get so much clarity on the meaning of your life's experiences. So much clarity on the meaning of your life's experiences. Now, what do I mean by that? Because of course you've lived your life, you know what you went through. But here's what happens when you start going through all those stories, all those experiences, all that wisdom, is you're going to start to see patterns. Now, all of us are changing and growing and becoming new people all the time. And of course, there are things from our background that we are going to leave behind as we're moving forward. But there also are things that are innate to who we are. Things that we carry through in our personality, in our actions, in our decisions, in our values, that we can start to see the constants and the changes. And that is what the meaning of our life story really is. Every single time you find a constant, that is a theme in your life. And every single time you find a change, that is an important key turn, a point at which you learn something new and something big about how life works. When we just think about the memoir we're going to write someday, or when we're just sharing stories here and there, we don't get the benefit of mapping our whole entire life out to see how those changes happen and see the things that we learned. It is only when we sit down and we map that whole story out that we are really able to get clear on what we've lived and why. So this is something that sneaks up on a lot of people, but I hear it over and over that once people tell their stories or they start to draft them down on paper, and then they read back through those chapters, they start to see all kinds of little details that they hadn't even noticed before. So I want to give one example. We worked with a woman, this is under NDA, but she had been an Olympian. She had done all of these amazing things working with women in sports over her lifetime. And one thing that had sparked her to get started on her memoir was 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, she was a woman of color, but she had not really identified herself as part of Black Lives Matter during the earlier protest periods, 2014, 2015. But when 2020 hit, something spoke to her, and she decided to dig a little bit further back into her own history to kind of see where were the points where she could connect and what were the points that really made sense to her. And one thing that she started to realize was all of the points at which representation of Black women had mattered so much to her life. So for instance, she talked about being a child and her brother just leaned, propped up on their elbows in front of the TV, watching some of these great athletes, particularly Black women athletes, be successful. And when she thought about that, she started to think about what it meant for her to be one of those athletes. I got chills. Now, had she thought about all of the reasons it was important for her to compete before? Of course. Of course. She'd been through the whole experience. She describes the moment of coming out on the track dressed in her Olympian suit as one of the most magical of her lifetimes. So she knows that was important. But it was not until she really started digging back, excavating out all of these moments of her childhood, her young adult life, and as she's an older woman now, into what she's experiencing now. That is special. It's magical. And it wouldn't have happened if she hadn't decided that now is the time. All right. So number one, you are going to get so much clarity on your life, your mission, your purpose, your values, and all of the wisdom that you have gathered throughout your time on this earth. All right. My number two reason. I buried the lead a little bit because this is one that I know a lot of people really connect to, but I want to help you kind of visualize what it will be like. So number two is you are going to feel such pride of authorship. Now, I know when we think about writing a book, of course we want that feeling of pride and that feeling of really having accomplished something that truly less than 1% of people ever achieve in their lifetime. But the thing that I think gets lost a lot in this talking point is that pride of authorship, that's great for you, but it's not really about you at all. And in fact, what I find when we work with folks is that a lot of times the proudest moments of publishing that memoir are not really about finishing the manuscript or signing with an agent or getting that manuscript or that book and holding it in your hand. The number one points of pride for most of our authors is actually about hearing from the people that they have inspired. So we wrote a memoir some time ago, The Ignorant Man's Son, and the author, Victor James Hill, really had decided he wanted to write this memoir to help and inspire others. But I will tell you from chatting with him in the months since that book has been out, that what he really was so surprised by was how many people would reach out and tell them it wasn't just his story that inspired them, it was him. So if you're not familiar with this book, first of all, hop over and order it right now. It is an excellent, excellent book. But I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what happens in that book. So Victor came from the housing projects at Lakeside Homes, which is in an area of Pontiac, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. And he spent his life working with children in those housing projects to make sure that they had inspiration, that they had educational opportunities, that they had breakfast and lunch even in the summertime, and that they were prepared with the life skills that all of us need to accomplish the things we're drawn to in our lives. So as he was putting that book out, we were really talking a lot about who do you hope to reach? And he had a lot of audiences. He wanted to reach people who are in prison and who are transitioning back into the world. He wanted to really inspire men and women to step up and be mentors for their neighborhood's children. And he wanted to really speak to a lot of kind of social justice advocates and social workers to just share his experience of being someone within a community who steps up to help that community. So we knew who he would hear from. But I will tell you, what we didn't know is that people would reach out to him and say, I am so inspired that you published a book. Within the very first week of this being on the market, he got a text from someone he had not talked to for a very long time saying, I think you are the first person from our community to publish a book. Now, he thought about it. He decided that was probably true. That had not even occurred to him. But this person went on to say that they had been inspired to do all kinds of things that they had been putting off in their own lives because of him. He got multiple letters from prisons where people had donated his book to prison libraries, and people were reading this book in prison. They were writing to him saying, I am so inspired to turn my life around and to get out so that I can really start communicating. So that I can really start helping the people that I care about in the same way that you did. And all of that is because he is an author. Yes, his story inspired them. His story gave them ideas for things that they would want to do to give back to their community. But in all of these letters, people said, I am so proud of you. And I want you to know that will happen to you too. I hear that from every single author I work with, that people not only share with them how impressed and proud they are of the book that that author put out, but also how impressed and proud they are of them for finishing that book, for publishing it, for getting it out there at such a high quality. I want you to have that too. And it's so important to remember that you are not only doing this for yourself, you are doing this to inspire other people just like you to step into their power and step into their story and their wisdom and share what they have to share with everyone around them. So, number 2 is you are going to have such a feeling of pride of authorship once you finish this memoir. Write it down, stick the post-it on your wall so you don't forget, because that is such a big one. Number 3, this is a 2-part reason that you are going to want to start this memoir right now. And I know I'm kind of cheating by getting 2 reasons into one, but bear with me. And this reason is about the way your past relationships are going to shift and change as you're going through the process of writing this book. So let me tell you a little bit more about these 2 parts of this issue. Number 1, you are going to get so much clearer on the meaning of those relationships. And number 2, you're going to actually be able to strengthen a lot of those past relationships through the process of writing your memoir. Okay, so the first, this is that as we are working through recalling our life and working through kind of the different scenes that happened and the way that we are taking lessons away from those scenes, a crucial central part of writing your memoir, what you are going to find is that you're going to be reflecting on relationships that you had that you now can see quite a bit differently. Now, of course, sometimes this is going to happen in the negative, where we're going to look back at a relationship, say, a friendship from high school or junior high or college, and we're going to think, that was just really not a great influence on me. And I will say, most of the people that I work with, they do have some moment like that where they kind of think, oh man, if I had that to do again, I would do it really, really different. But I think the more magical version of this is when we look back at relationships that we interpreted one way. And now that we're grown, now that we're a little bit older, we see them really differently. So I want to give you an example from a coaching client that I'm working with now. Shout out to Maggie. As we were working through one of her chapters, we were talking a little bit about her grandfather. Now, she had lived with her grandfather along with her mother. And one thing that had happened was that there was a little bit of kind of a rivalry and some toxic things. I don't want to spoil this book, but some toxic things that were happening with her mother. And as she was younger, she really didn't have any way to look at that situation other than kind of what people were telling her, right? So her mother was kind of framing her grandfather as being really, really strict and really controlling, and he wouldn't listen. And really, if you wanted to do anything for yourself, you kind of had to go behind his back. And she took all of that and internalized it and kind of went on with her life. Well, as we paused, as we looked through what she had been through, what she had experienced, she had this really, I tear up when I think about it. She had this moment where she thought, oh my gosh, my grandfather was really just trying to do the best that he could. Now, were there things that he did that she didn't really agree with? Oh, yes, absolutely. And there were, things that she shared with me that I thought, oh my gosh, that was really not the way for him to behave. But the thing that happened was, as she was thinking through, it really allowed her to get a different perspective on this part of her life and this person that had been in her life. And that is going to happen for you too. Think about it. All of us go through that, right? We're growing up with our parents or our grandparents, or whoever was around you. And we have a very particular way that we're going to look at those folks because we're a child, right? Our brains aren't even developed until we're into our 20s. So we really can't look at the situation in an objective way at all. When we go back and look at those old wounds and those old hurts, they can take such a different shape. And that is what you are going to get out of going back, working on your memoir right now. But there's a second piece to this too. Now, unfortunately, Maggie's grandfather had passed, so there was no way for her to go back to him and kind of make amends. Although I do like to think that, us coming to terms with the relationships we've had in the past, that still really matters whether we can reach out to that person or not. But I have also worked with a lot of folks who have used their memoir to reconnect with people that they really had wanted to reconnect with for a long time, but they really just couldn't find the courage to just reach out. So what does this look like? Well, a lot of times as you are working on your memoir, you are going to have to put these relational pieces into the scenes, right? Nobody's memoir is just them walking by themselves through their life, right? So one thing that a recent client of ours, Wendy Davis, did is that she went through her memoir and she marked all the places where someone else's actions or speech had an impact on her story. And then she reached out to all of those people. Now, some of them didn't reply, and that's okay. But with others, she invited them to have coffee or lunch or even just hop on a Zoom. And she went over the scene as she had written it. She asked them, do you remember this differently? Would you say this is a fair framing? Not all of those conversations went great. Some of the folks she talked to were really kind of leery about being in her memoir. That is going to happen. It's just part of the process. It's your story. You decide whether you want to tell it. But what happened with some others was that she was able to reconnect with people that had actually had a really influential part in her life and in this part of her story. I've seen that so often with Victor James Hill I was talking about earlier. He had a lot of scenes where his sister, who had been addicted to crack cocaine, she was able to lift herself out of that situation and now is the best grandmother to her children. But during the period that his book was set, she was going through a really hard time. Well, a lot of the things he went through had to do with helping to boost her up, take care of her children who he adopted. So as we were getting toward the end of that writing process, he had to reach out with his sister, sit her down and say, here is the story I want to tell. What do you need to feel okay with it? And one of the things they settled on was that she could go with him to do some of the talks that he wanted to do some of the inspiring messaging that he wanted to do. She could be part of that. So not only was he able to leverage his story in a way that really was so beneficial, he also was able to reach out a hand, bring his sister along so that she could get that amazing feeling of her story meaning so much more than it had before. So as we're going through, our number 2 reason for getting started on your memoir now is that you are going to have the opportunity to reframe and revisit and reconnect with so many of these people in your past. And sometimes it's going to be hard, but I promise you, it is going to give you so much clarity and comfort as you're reconnecting with folks. Number 4. This one is not necessarily going to apply to everyone, but I want to throw it out there just so you can keep it in the back of your mind. One of the things that I find people really struggle with is conceptualizing and just wrapping your head around what is going to happen with this memoir after you finish it. Now, if you have heard, if you build it, they will come. I do want to tell you that is not the case. If you want people to read your memoir, you will absolutely have to make some kind of a plan for promoting it. We do all of that. We help with all of that within the Memoir Method. So if you're looking for support, you can reach out, sign up for that program. But what I want to talk about is why this creates a reason for you to get started now. And that is, even though it's not going to be passive income, it can be so nice to have that little extra income stream that you can lean into or lean out of promoting and really help drive a little bit of extra cash into your pocket. Now, if you are a business owner, if you're somebody that is an entrepreneur or you're, affiliated with consulting or coaching program of some sort, this is actually quite easy. And in fact, a lot of the coaches and other entrepreneurs that I work with are really able to put their book on Amazon, link to it a few places in their website, then kind of follow up with social here and here and there to make sure that people are getting to that book and purchasing that book. That can be a few $100. every month, all the way up to, thousands of dollars for the year. So this is something that you are going to want to get started on right away. But even if you are not somebody that is an entrepreneur that really sees yourself leaning all into the business of your book, really and truly, you can do a lot to drive sales of that book without really having to bend over backwards. You do not have to quit your day job. There are things that you can do to really help drive promotion without a ton of money or work. Again, we talk about a lot of these in the Memoir method, but some of my favorites include pitching yourself for podcasts, giving talks to your local Chamber of Commerce or Kiwanis or Rotary if you've got groups like that in your area. You can reach out to do coaching or consulting for particular people that you might want to work with. So even if it's not full-time, maybe you just want to kind of dabble in that. There are lots of ways to do this, to get the word out, to get your sales moving without it having to break the bank. So this is number 4, and truly this is going to be something that you're going to have to decide how much work you want to do for. But it can be an excellent reason to get started now, because the sooner you get started, the sooner you're finished, and the sooner you're going to start seeing that revenue coming in, and the sooner you're going to be able to get that book into people's hands. Okay. Number 5, I saved this one for last because it is a little bit of a downer, and that is the reason you need to get started right now is that this process takes longer than you think. Now, this past weekend, I was with a group of entrepreneurs, and we were kind of spitballing and talking about our different things that we have coming up. And I mentioned that we are getting ready to launch the inaugural class of the Memoir Method group coaching program. It's amazing. We're going to be opening doors January 11th to January 25th for a February 1st cohort start date. But my point, I was talking with some other entrepreneurs about the process and the way we have the program structured. And I will tell you, people were a little bit surprised that it's a 9-month program. A lot of folks thought, well, surely it can't take that long. So what I want to do is I want to break down the timeline just a little bit here so you can see why it is so important to start now if you want to finish your book in 2024. So usually the way that we break this down is just a few different stages. Your first stage is going to be your development stage. That's where you're going to come up with your outline. You're going to think about what's your message. What do you want to make sure your audience takes away? What's your kind of contribution with the book overall? That is going to take you usually a minimum of a month. I like to plan on 2 months because by the time you work through all the stuff you've got to work through up front, it just can take a little bit longer than you think. But you want to plan on a minimum of 1 month to kind of get through all of that stuff. I will say, you can check out our Memoir Method checklist, which is going to have a free training to walk you through that stage. That is at pageandpodium.com/checklist. So grab that right now. But be sure you plan a month or 2 for that stage. Then, once you get into the writing, at Page and Podium, when we write for other people, we are professional writers. We're pretty good at this. We still allow 1 week per chapter. I have a lot of coaching clients that keep that pace up for most of the program, but you are probably going to need more than a week for some of the chapters. If there's a particularly difficult emotional aspect or, stuff that you're really going to have to reflect on, a week is probably not enough time to plan and write your draft. Well, if you think about the average memoir having, say, around 20 chapters, once we start thinking about a week per chapter on 20 chapters, you are already at a minimum of 5 months for drafting. Now, let's say just 4 of those chapters cause you, a little bit of a stumble or, kind of a headache. You got to think about them. Let's say that you've got 4 more chapters where something comes up in your life and you're not able to work ahead quite as fast as you wanted to. Well, we are already up to 6-7 months. Plus that development month, we're already at 8. Then we've still got to go back and we've got to revise. Now, this often goes much, much quicker than the drafting part. You're not creating new ideas usually, and even though there will be some scenes that need rewritten and some framing you'll need to tweak, all of this, by the way, we systematized it in the Memoir Method. So even though I know this feels a little nebulous, I promise we've got you. But it is going to at least take you 1 month, and we're already at 9. So within the Memoir Method container, we also have publishing and marketing resources. So you've got other stuff. If you end up finishing a little bit early, don't worry. We've got plenty of resources for you. But at minimum, whether you're in our program or on your own, really, you are going to have to plan for a 9-month minimum turnaround to get this draft done. What does that mean? It means if you start with us February 1st, you can probably finish or very, very close by the end of 2024. If you wait much longer, it's not quite as likely you're going to get done. You're probably pushing your date into 2025. And now you are dealing with the Thanksgiving holiday season that probably slowed you down on a lot of your goals for 2023, at least. Maybe I'm projecting my own stuff onto all of you. But once we get to that end of year time, it can be really hard to continue progress. So starting early in the year is the only way you're really going to make sure you can contain that project within that 12-month span that I know you want to hit. Okay, now I promised you a bonus reason, the one reason that even if you feel ready to write your memoir, you should not. And that reason is you don't have enough distance on the part of your life you want to talk about. Now, what do I mean by that? So when we're writing a memoir, we need to choose one kind of chunk of our life, right? There's no really hard and fast definition for how long that chunk can be, but we certainly aren't going to go, from our birth all the way to now. We want to pick a more narrow chunk. This is something that we help you with if you get in the program. So come join us or keep watching these YouTube videos for more. But if you do not have the distance yet, it's going to be really hard for you to go beyond just the story to giving your reader the wisdom they want to get from that memoir, the things that you have learned and the things that you want to teach them. So if it's only been, a month or two since really the conclusion of your story, since you were triumphant in your story, it may be a little bit soon. You may need a little bit more reflection time and a little bit more kind of either, with your therapist or with your support system, whatever that looks like, just talking through what you went through. But I want to give you a quick way to figure out whether you're ready to tell that story yet. And that is that you're going to put together a preliminary theme. Now, this is something we do with everybody in the Memoir Method, but you can do this on your own too. All you're going to do is complete the Mad Lib. I used to think X, but now I know Y. I used to think X, but now I know Y. And what you're filling in there is the misconception you had when you started your story and the truth that you discovered by going through all the hard things in your life. I used to think X, now I know Y. Put it together, and I would love to hear what you come up with for your theme. You can leave it in our comments below this video, or you can shout out to us at books@pageandpodium.com and let us know what you think. And for now, if you know it is time to get started on your memoir, I want you to hop over to pageandpodium.com/memoir-method. We'll put the link below as well, because you can read more about the program, learn about everything we have packed into this group coaching program, and you can go ahead and sign up and save your seat now. So don't wait. This is the easiest action you're going to take. From there, you're going to have all the support and encouragement you need to finish this memoir once and for all, get it off of that rotating cycle of New Year's resolutions, and finally feel that pride of ownership, that clarity of what your life has meant. And I know it is going to be so rewarding. So stay tuned for more on that. It was great to talk to you today. Happy writing. If it feels like your memoir is on hold because you're too busy diving down the Google rabbit hole looking for all of the answers to writing and publishing questions, then I have a download that is just for you. This free download is called the Memoir Method Checklist, and it's going to walk you through all the stages of getting your memoir out into the public, all the way from developing and outlining, all the way to publishing and promoting. This is every single step that my team and I at Page and Podium Press use to get our clients' memoirs out in the world. And if you download it today, you're also going to get a free bonus video training that dives deep into all the things you need to do to get your memoirs, theme, messages, and intervention very, very clear before you even outline your book. You are not going to want to miss these free resources. I know if you follow this checklist, you are going to end up with a memoir that you are so proud to publish. I can't wait to read it.